Folks, let me entertain and delight you with a story of conservative infighting. It's actually pretty spooky. Yeah, you might like it. So, for those of you who do not know, Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. Full-on Nazi, Holocaust denial, thinks Jews control the world, everything is white genocide, the whole nine yards. And Nick Fuentes has had a beef with some prominent members of more traditional-leaning conservative thought, one of which is Charlie Kirk. Now, the relationship between the Nazi right and the non-Nazi right has been pretty complicated for a while. They don't really mind each other, or at least not traditionally they don't. Mainstream conservatives, they really don't care about having Nazis in their ranks. There have been Nazis, Ku Klux Klanners, white citizens councilmen in the ranks of the Republican Party now for 60 years. And it often goes undiscussed. This is well known. They really do not care. And it's one of the reasons why the big ups of the conservative groups, they don't really make any effort to distance themselves from the Nazis. They really don't. I mean, they really don't. Even when they're saying some really Nazi shit, they really don't make any effort. So when Steven Crowder is making a video on how the Western civilization needs to defend itself from the corrupting influence of immigration, he will not then add an addendum saying, by the way, I'm not a white nationalist, you guys. Because it's vague. Now, for the most part, mainstream conservatives really do not care about the Nazi element. The arrangement is that the Nazis have to stay mostly quiet, not kill too many people, not create too much of a fuss, and occasionally they have to take a public condemnation on the cheek. You know, a little performative gesture. So if a Nazi goes overboard and kills a few folks, then you can expect your local Republican senator, oh, this is a horrible thing, terrible. How could this have happened? How could anybody have been led to the ideology, which is the natural conclusion of the propaganda I disseminate and don't even believe in? And that's how it went for a really long time. Trump kind of changed that, though, because in Charlottesville, when neo-Nazis murdered a person and, well, were neo-Nazis, Trump didn't condemn them, the president of the United States. And since then, the neo-Nazis have grown larger and gotten a lot greedier for public acceptance. Enter Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, not a Nazi, still a dumb fuck, still a fascist, not a Nazi, though. Nick Fuentes types have been aching for an opportunity to cause some drama, to flex their muscles, so to speak, between them and the more traditional wing of the conservative party, like, say, for example, Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk is very much a white supremacist. All the information he disseminates, all the propaganda, is identical to that which a white supremacist would disseminate. So that's great. You have all the same anti-LGBT, all the same anti-working class. It all fits. It all tracks. Of course, there are some issues. When mainstream conservatives denounce like trans people or gay people or LGBT community or whatever, they always do it for a reason. So, for example, when someone like Steven Crowder denounces drag queens, he'll say it's enabling sexualization of children. Oh, it's creepy. Oh, this is weird. Or when he denounces trans people, he'll pretend to care about them. He'll say like, oh, is it really best for the mental health of these people that we cut their dicks off and pretend that they're girls? You know, I just want what's best for them, ignoring, of course, all data, such and such. But that's what they do. There's always a reason to it, you know? But Nazis don't care about that. Nazis will just stand up and say, no, fuck that. We're moral traditionalists. Trans people and gay people are degenerate. Interracial marriage is degenerate. We don't need a reason to condemn these things. We just don't like them. They're not in line with our values, and they're degenerate. And Another big one is support of Israel, obviously. Nazis don't like the fact that America supports Israel. Charlie Kirk supports Israel, as is the traditional neocon position. Of course, the Nazi opposition to support of Israel has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that, Israel is an ethno-state, or that it practices, war crimes against the people it subjects to brutal oppression and police terror. They just don't like the fact that they're Jews. That's it. That's it. And while people like Charlie Kirk will still rail against Mexican immigration, they will make some broad, we just want the most meritocratic immigration policies possible. So they'll quietly push policies that keep brown people out of the country, but publicly they'll say, we're just doing this to facilitate that only the best enter this country, so on and so forth. But Nazis don't care about any of that. Fundamentally, they're all moving in the same direction, but Nazis don't care for the pretense. In that respect, the Nazis are honest in their dishonesty. The Charlie Kirk types probably don't believe half of the shit they say. It's impossible to tell. I couldn't really say. But they're dishonest in the sense that they don't really sort of reflect on where their propaganda leads. But that's not the case with Nazis. Nazis know where it leads. It leads in genocide, apartheid, xenophobia, and a terror police state. And they want all those things because most of them are absolute brainless loser white fail sons who have trouble getting laid and have absolutely no idea how to conduct themselves in social settings. So they've convinced themselves there is a conspiracy of the highest order designed to keep them down. So, Politicon 2019. Charlie Kirk was doing some culture war TPUSA thing at Ohio State University. Was this Politicon, or was this just the Ohio State University thing? I don't think this was Politicon. This was just Ohio State University. My apologies. One way or another, he was doing a conference thing, A conference? Like, you go up on a stage and you talk to folks about how poor people are lazy and the traditional, the traditional conservative muck. And Nick Fuentes, Nick the Knife, Nick from the, get it, Nicker Nation, everyone's favorite deranged, smiling sociopath, tried to barge in on this, tried to hop in, and the police stopped him. There was prior beef between him and Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk didn't want him in. And while Nick may not have gotten in, a lot of Nick's fans did. And what resulted was a really, really fascinating clash of cultures, which we can look at here. See, for the first 2/3 or so of this culture war talk, it was just the two guys up there. It was Charlie Kirk and that obnoxious gay black man who we have an emote for, either here or in the Discord. He has that crooked smile. He was in the Vice documentary on black conservatives, I think. Or was it gay conservatives? Yep, no, that's the one. Yep, that's the one. And they were both up there and they were talking about, the classic stuff, the classic neocon, line. And then it came time for Q&A. And pretty much every single person who came up to talk was a Nick Fuentes fan. Nick Fuentes fans bombed the live stream. They dislike bombed the video itself. If you keep a hot look on the right-hand side of the chat, you'll see a myriad people who communicate exclusively in typing based and groiper in all caps, along with accusing Charlie Kirk of being a Jewish shill. Let's have a listen, huh? We can have a listen to some of these questions. This is, by the way, this is Nazi intelligentsia. Every single one of the people who came up here to talk, every one of Nick's fans, they had their phone in front of them to their question memorized. I don't know if they individually wrote them down beforehand or if Nick had a live stream where he encouraged people to ask these questions specifically. But let's see.
Breaking work, we now understand that sexual liberation is political control. It's a form of political control. And you have multiple times advocated on behalf of accepting homosexuality, accepting homosexual acts as normative in the conservative movement. How does anal sex help us win the culture war?
I'm going to let the game.
How does anal sex help us win the culture war? Now, on the face of it, this is an overwhelmingly irrational question. What the fuck does that mean? How does your haircut help us win the culture war? What is the culture war? What does anal sex have to do with anything? Straight people do anal sex too? But, of course, that question isn't directed to actually posit a question. There's no real answer to it. It's not a good faith question. And what's more, it's known to be deliberately irrational. Remember, Nazis are deliberately irrational. Nick Fuentes himself said in a live stream that he did while speaking to Hassan Piker and Destiny Esteban Beneblo II that if he doesn't like information, if he doesn't like the facts, like the studies, he'll just say they're Jewish. He'll just say that they're written by Jews. They're invalid. He is utterly unconcerned with the fact that his information, his propaganda, is built on a foundation of lies. He's fine with that because it's not about the facts, it's about the feels. There is no greater indication of feels over facts than what you will see from neo-Nazis. At least, and I'm serious, even the worst, like, triggered SJWs, I'm again, like, you know, like, well beyond me. I mean people men and women are the same strength, you know, just whatever ridiculous, like, hyperbolic, unsustainable statements you can imagine. Even these people, I think, have at least a passing interest in substantiating their claims with fact. But that's not how Nazi propaganda works. Nazi propaganda works on finding insecure or angry people, usually white men, and targeting those insecurities and bits of anger with propaganda pieces specifically designed to exacerbate any irrational fears that you might have there. So when you listen to that, how does anal sex help us win the culture war? No reasonable human being would hear that and think, well, shit, you're right. Nobody would do that. That's ridiculous. But a sufficiently angry, delusional, paranoid person might hear that and think, yeah, I thought we were supposed to be the party of morals. What happened to conservatism now that we let these fucking faggots fuck around and we don't even denounce that shit? And that's who it's targeted at. And that's why people cheered when he said it. We can keep going. Every single one of these questions is like that.
Hey, man, wait a minute. So can I ask you a question?
Oh, and I should say, by the way, Kirk and whoever the fuck this guy is completely floundered in their answers. And we're going to talk about why soon. Here? Oh, here we go. This guy's got a patch in his arm. Lovely.
As a conservative, you know, at times, and you can boo and you can do whatever you want to, baby, because I'm going to be me, and I'm still here.
Next question.
What's the question?
My question is largely directed to Mr. Kirk because you were raised as a conservative. Part of the issue I see here is, what's your name, Rob?
Yeah.
So you're saying, oh, you're behind the times, this isn't conservative. Well, we don't want centrists in the conservative movement. We want to retain our core values.
Yeah, but
So this is, again, a neo-Nazi telling a fascist that we don't want centrists in our conservative party.
But here's the thing. It's not about what you want, because here's the thing. The beauty about social media is that I can be me and I can bring myself to the table. And it's not about what you want, it's about what the people want. And if there are enough people in this movement that say, hey, Rob is cool, he's gay, whatever, it really doesn't matter what you think. You can say whatever you want and you can believe whatever you want to believe.
Let me ask my question.
But it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. And it's not going to deplatform me.
So my question is, again, it's directed to Mr. Kirk because he was raised as a conservative. You know, as the guy before has said, you know, you've advocated for homosexuality, said that there's a place for the gay agenda within the conservative movement. My question is, and you're also comfortable with transgenders and cross-dressers, I understand. So my question is there any point where conservatives should take a moral stance on Christian morality, or should we abandon it altogether? So in other words, what is TPUSA's, what is your brand of conservatism doing to actually conserve Christian morality? If we're ceding to the left on transgender, gay rights, gay marriage, we don't want that in conservatism. So
I mean, he's not wrong. Traditionally, Christian morality would have advocated for the execution of gay people and trans people. He's not wrong. The point, of course, is that modern morality has dragged us away from those, and I would call them fairly reasonable in saying this, degenerate practices. So he's honest in that respect. And you know what's really funny to me? What's that guy's name? Rob, the black guy? What's really funny to me is the conservative grifter line. He's black and gay, you know? And he's a conservative. Huge dipshit, too. I mean, we've seen the videos with him. Huge cunt, stupid, piece of shit, fuckwad, can lick the shit from my asshole. Don't care about him. However, there is something to be said about calling yourself a conservative and then sitting on a stage to get condemned by neo-Nazis who are the logical product of the propaganda you've been disseminating. There is something to that. It's not going to change his mind. These people are grifters and have no values whatsoever. But it is funny. I sometimes wonder, is this Nazi thing pushing itself too far? Trump is going to be out of office either in 1 year or in 5. A Nazi takeover of a country takes a long time. But what's more, it takes a unified will amongst the population. Now, I don't want to draw any hasty comparisons to the Weimar Republic, a traditionally, progressive government fraught with economic peril, turns towards increasingly autocratic forms of government until a Nazi wing seizes control of the government and begins enacting a Nazi, dictatorial process. I don't want to, sort of overly hastily lead down that way. I think this does speak to the importance of electoralism, though, because it is entirely possible that the Nazis are going to overstay their welcome on this one. That's a big, big important point. The more visible and evident they make themselves, which is what they're doing here. This was a big flex for them. And a big split is happening right now. Mr. Medicare, a Nazi. Jesse Lee Peterson, a Nazi. Stefan Molyneux, a Nazi, and Paul Joseph Watson, I don't know if he's a Nazi, but he's definitely a fascist who talks a lot about moral degeneracy, have all thrown their weight against Charlie Kirk and behind Nick Fuentes, which now means that in terms of public appeal, the Nazi wing of this little divide actually might have more popular media exposure than the traditional neocon conservative line. At least they're dividing. They're not dividing. They're consolidating. This is not funny infighting where everyone on their side gets weaker. Isn't JLP just a fashy white nationalist? No, he's talked about Jews before. Puppet state. Can you explain what traditional neocon means? A traditional neocon would be like a civic nationalist. Somebody who's probably personally a white supremacist and personally a bigot, but who at least plays lip service to concepts like freedom of speech, democracy, egalitarianism. Nazis don't do that. Let's continue, huh?
You don't want him in the conservative movement? I just want to be very clear. Let's just be...
So you don't...
I remember this one that I'm scrolling over on the buffering bar right now. This one was a leftist. Oh, here, this one was good. The 12-year-old.
All right, so according to the U.S. Census Bureau, population...
Just a second. Look at how big the hat is. Look at how big the fucking hat is on his head. Oh, man. But it's also really sad because he's a Nazi and he's like 2.
Projections. In 2045, whites will account for less than 50% of the population in the United States. Given that the Democratic Party's policies do not point towards the maintaining of our American ideals, And given the most groups other than whites overwhelmingly vote Democrat, how can we be sure that said American ideals will be maintained when millions of immigrants come in with majority Democratic support? Can you prove that our white European ideals can be maintained if the country's majority is no longer made up of white European descendants?
Notice all of the times he changed the subject there. Yeah, he's not even white. He would get kicked out of the ethno-state. Same with Fuentes. Notice all the times he changed the question there. So it began with, here, we can go over it point by point. This is really interesting. These Nazi-like pseudo questions sound impressive until you just take a second. You just take a second and listen them through. By the way, this is what Nick Fuentes does as well. I've called him a good rhetorician in the past, and he is. He's very talented. Smart boy. What he isn't, however, of course, is good at answering questions, because there is no way, no matter how intelligent you are, to make a clear and concise and convincing case for Nazism logically. It's not possible, because Nazism is irrational, and it operates on half-baked emotional truths, not factual ones. So this is pretty much how he talks. Let's break this down, huh?
So, according to the U.S. Census Bureau population projections, in 2045, whites will account for less than 50% of the population in the United States.
To my knowledge, this is true.
Given that the Democratic Party's policies do not point towards the maintaining of our American ideals,
that is a complete non sequitur. What does the Democratic Party have to do with this? Both Democrats and Republicans are in their own way pushing for immigration reform. None of them are trying to shut down immigration completely. What are American values? What the fuck does that, what does that even mean? What are American values? America has traditionally been an immigrant nation that prioritizes democracy. One could argue letting other people in and letting this country change with the ebb and flow of immigration waves is actually a quintessentially American product. So notice here how he says American values.
and given the most groups other than whites overwhelmingly vote Democrat, how can we be sure that said American ideals will be maintained when millions of immigrants come in with majority Democratic support?
Again, no definition for American values proposed here. Democracy is a pretty strong American value. I don't know where that one went.
Can you prove that our white European
White European. See, you can't let them get away with that if they're talking that way to you. It's the slippy little bits like that. What the fuck do American values have to do with what the fuck is white European values? For one, Europe has been fighting with itself for approximately as long as the Earth has existed. Since Stardust coagulated together, since Stardust unified into a molten core and the continents began to arrange themselves, the Proto-European continent portion of Pangaea, there were fucking singular cell organisms bashing little fucking clubs against each other over their differences in European values. Europe has been fighting with itself relentlessly for literally 2,000 plus years. So for you to say American values and then transplant it to white European values, for one, there's no such thing as European values. It doesn't exist. What is a European value? Bad food? I don't know. That's not fair. What do you mean white? There are plenty of non-whites in Europe, and there have been for millennia. There was a fucking black Roman king, not fucking emperor. A black Roman emperor. There were black Roman citizens. There were people of color stretching across the coast from Europe for a very, very long time. They like to deny that. They lie about it all the time. They love to lie. They love to pretend, oh, the Greeks and the Romans were all lily white. They love to do that. And they get really mad. And you know how I know they get really mad? Because when researchers found out that wasn't the case, they received hate mail and death threats from neo-Nazis. When anthropologists and historians who had no political bias, who were just interested in learning more about the history of Europe, uncovered that there was a multiracial, multicultural history to that place, standing back for as long as Europe has meant shit, they were dogpiled with hate from white nationalist groups because they can't stand the truth. They can't. They get so mad. They get so mad. And maybe one of those anthropologists ended up being Jewish too. So you can just write the whole fucking thing off. You know, they get so fucking mad. So we've got American values being supplanted with white European values. Here's another fucking thing. What the fuck does white mean? White is subjective. You know how I know that? Because back in Hitler's day, he wanted to purify the world for the white race. He would say this. He was Aryan, yes, but he was also for the whites. And you know what he up and did? He went into Poland and he killed a fuckload of blonde-haired, blue-eyed motherfuckers because they were Slavs. To him, they weren't white, even though they met all of the identifying characteristics we would associate with whiteness. And nowadays, people like the alternative hypothesis say that actually Hitler wasn't pro-white because he killed so many white people. The definition of white shifts to whatever is most convenient for that generation's group of white nationalists. So whiteness doesn't mean anything in the white European values. Europe has nothing to do with this, and there are no consistent white European values. None of this has anything to do with American values. And also, why the fuck should I, as an American, give a shit about European values? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? I don't want fucking British security cameras in every street corner. I don't want fucking Germany's having to eat whatever the fuck they eat in Germany. I don't want Switzerland's military conscription. I have no idea what the fuck we're talking. I'm a fucking American, baby. I love my First Amendment. I love my Second Amendment. There are probably other amendments that I like. I don't know. People only talk about the first two. Why the fuck should I give a shit about fucking, my heritage? What the fuck gives me your hair? We all came from Africa, bitch. You cut off arbitrarily at fucking Europe because I'm sorry. Well, I could cut it off arbitrarily at Europe because I'm white. Little fucking baby Hitler over here. I'm sorry, babe. You've got maybe one, maybe two generations before your glorious ethnic bloodline is fucking meandering in some equatorial country. Okay, I'm terribly sorry, but this is the vision they sell. This is the LARPy vision that they sell. American values means European values, and European values means white values, even though Europe and America aren't the same, and Europe isn't the same with itself, and Europe has not been white historically completely, and whiteness changes. It's every tier of the question is loaded. And that's how Stormfront's done it for ages. The whole "we come from Africa" thing is a myth, Vosh. Here, hold on. We can educate ourselves. Where did ancestral humans come from? Humans first evolved in Africa, and much of human evolution occurred on that continent. Yeah, it's not a myth. Africa or the Middle East, right? Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right. I mean, I'm sure it's very complicated, but the point stands, I think. Whatever the case may be, let's continue. We've got so many more.
Ideals can be maintained if the country's majority is no longer made up of white European descendants.
See, they're happy. The Nick Fuentes crowd.
Should we support mass legal immigration?
Okay, thank you.
So, and again, I don't need to provide the answers that these two dumb fucks provide because they are utterly fucking baffled. Look at Rob's face. Look at his fucking face up here. He's like, is he? I want to imagine these people are like human beings. Is he having an epiphany right now? Is he thinking, "Oh my God, I'm actually getting woke scolded by neo-Nazis right now"? This is what this is, by the way. This is woke scolding. Nazis come in here and moralize and say that other people aren't actually real conservatives because they don't meet the moral standards. This is unironically woke scolding. All right, let's hit another one.
Next question.
Yeah, what a racist question that was. A quick and fun, lighthearted question for you, Charlie.
I remember this one. Oh, yeah, look, he's wearing "Socialism Sucks" and "I Heart Israel." He's going to ask a pro-Israeli question, get weird response.
I know you gave a speech in Jerusalem early this year.
Yes, I did.
Were there any awesome, fun dance parties that you guys had afterwards? Because I heard that Israelis are some of the best dancers in the world. I mean, if you guys don't believe me, just Google dancing Israelis. It's insane how good their dance moves are.
Wait, hold on. Dancing Israelis. Let's... yes, I see. It's a 9/11 conspiracy theory. I didn't actually follow through to the last sentence, so here's him saying the Jews did 9/11. What is the 5 dancing Israelis incident? From today's Catholic world. Nick Fuentes is Catholic. The 5 dancing Israelis arrested on 9/11. Hey, this guy went all out too. He even wore an "I Love Israel" pin.
Would you agree or disagree with that?
Israel's a beautiful country, a great country too.
Yeah, he's nothing because he doesn't know the fucking dog whistle.
Get over it. Next. All right. So that next question. Thank you. You got one question.
Wait, what did he ask?
I'm a little sick, so I'm sorry about my voice, but I have 2 quick questions, very quick.
John
Do
DeFar.
you believe in free speech? Absolutely.
Well, look, I mean, I believe every individual has freedom of speech, but also part of freedom of speech is you have the freedom to associate with who you want to associate with. You can say, I want to listen to certain things, I don't want to listen to certain things, as an individual. And I believe the solution to hate speech is more speech. As we're demonstrating tonight, we literally say if you disagree, you're allowed to go to the front of the line. I think we're practicing what we preach. Well, if you disagree, then go to the front of the line. You all disagree, well then, fight over it. So that next question, thank you.
And my question, all right, so I've followed you for a while. I've listened to a lot of your talks. And my question is this. Given that your interpretation of traditional conservative values stems from 1965 on...
Can I just say, by the way, before he goes through all the dog whistles, I just want to say, does this person not look like he's the kind of guy who would make a YouTube channel of him talking about the inequalities between men and women and how men get fucked over while pretending to swill like a brandy glass, and behind him there's like a skull of some kind sitting on like a shelf, you know, and he's sitting in like one of those overstuffed armchairs. Yeah.
Immigration. And 2015...
So let's go over really quickly. Let's go over these dog whistles.
Interpretation of traditional conservative values stems from 1965 on immigration.
So 1965 was the Hart-Celler Act, which was the year that the immigration laws for people getting let into the country changed. And what that invariably led to is a lot of non-white people entering the country. So he's saying that your views on immigration are... This is like a complete non sequitur. What the fuck does that mean? The entire country changed its immigration values in 1965. That everyone did that. This like, your conservative values are rooted in 1965 immigration. This is like this is complete non sequitur. It has nothing to do with anything.
15 on race. I'd like to know, how long do we have to wait until child drag shows are pushed as American traditional conservatism?
Let me
see. Notice again. This is a complete non-question. What the fuck does that mean? 60 years ago, there was a bipartisan support for an immigration bill, and I just want to know how long it is before child drag. The fuck do you mean? What the fuck are you talking about? Hey, by the way, I'm gonna zoom out so I can zoom back in. I'm zooming out right now. I'm gonna zoom back in now. You know what has been a traditional conservative thing for a really long time here in America? Child beauty pageants and child marriage. That's traditionally conservative. Notice how this extremely ethical neo-Nazi only cares when it's drag shows, but when it's beauty shows where you have little girls strung up in frilly little dresses with a bunch of skin showing, and when it's literal fucking child marriage, See, that's the great conservative dichotomy there. It is A-okay to fuck children as long as they're dressed correspondingly to the genitalia they were born with. That's sort of that's the guiding mantra right there. That's what they want. When they're fucking jerking their gherkin, when they're pounding their little fucking flagpole to children, they want to imagine them in like the lily white dress, you know, like a little 4-year-old girl in like the white with the lace and stuff. They don't want to imagine any of this weird like queer faggot drag queen shit. The fuck is, what are they, fucking gay? Conservative morality.
Let me answer. I'm going to answer that question.
There is no answer to that question that you are capable of providing.
How is regurgitating this far away?
I'm ready.
Hey,
Hey.
Questions for Charlie.
Hey.
So, in the wake of the student debt crisis,
Notice, by the way, and I try not to ad hom, every single one of these Nazi Groiper or whatever's coming on up here, every single one of them has seemed like a lonely, like, kind of loserish dude. And like, except for that kid, I guess, but like, he's a fucking kid, you know?
stagnant wage growth across all education levels in all fields.
Speak up.
STEM. How is regurgitating this far left talking point of stapling green cards to diplomas America first? How is this any different than chain migration funded by taxpayers through the NSF, DOE, DOD? Those funds go to...
Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate on it.
So it's the exact same thing. How is it America first to allow people to come into the country? Like, it's that simple. It's that simple. It's funny, by the way, and it's funny, and I've said this before, I think. It's funny. It is really funny to me. And he sounded like he was crying. It's really funny to me that Nick Fuentes and his supporters pretend to be America first when they really, like, let's be real, they don't give a fuck about America. They don't care about the American Constitution. They don't care about democracy or free speech. America was founded as a national experiment following the Enlightenment, which means its values are fundamentally liberal. And I mean liberal in a classical sense, you know? Liberal like laissez-faire capitalism, for example, and immigration, that kind of liberal. If you love America, you have to love democracy and freedom. You can't. It's not possible. You can't pretend to be America first and then spit in the face of every value America. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the founding fathers lived up to the promises in which this country was built, but those are unmistakably the promises upon which this country was built. So for people to come up there and then say, oh yeah, I'm America first. And by America first, I don't mean its constitution, its legal system, its current laws, most of the people who are in office, and a huge chunk of its current population, probably most of its population, because we have to get rid of the white degenerates as well. That's the America. Nah, fuck you. Just say heterosexual white people first, you know? But that would be honest, and that's a problem for them. Let's get it in.
And you said during the debate that the free speech police
speak up,
are telling people that they can no longer say certain things. Yet, as you were saying that, you had actual police prevent someone from merely watching the debate.
True.
Nick Fuentes. And there was no evidence that he was going to be disruptive or break the rules. But now Nick has some...
He said, knowing full well that Nick Fuentes brought like a group of his little fucking groypers over to ask questions, and his fans have already been disruptive.
Pretty abhorrent views that I strongly disagree with. But you say socialism is the most evil and deadly ideology.
Somebody told me that the police did something. That wasn't my event this weekend. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I'm getting all these messages that said I kicked somebody out. What do you mean?
Well, he was so there were multiple times when he went up to, he was in a line to take a picture with you, and then he was barred from taking a picture with you, and then he was barred specifically from your event. He was told that he could just...
Is this the internet troll? I'm confused who you're talking about.
Who are these people?
Who are you? I want to be sure that is this the internet troll that is the guy that believes in white ethno-nationalism or? Yes. Oh, okay. I just want to make sure, because there is a guy that infiltrated our booth at Politicon that security came up to us and they said we're not allowing this guy at the event. Maybe that's what you're talking about.
Okay, so it was at Politicon, and this was a subsequent event. Okay, the timeline is confirmed.
Because there's a guy that infiltrated our booth, and then the Politicon security, an event that I don't run, they came up to me and they said, this guy made a little disruption. But I want to clear this up because I'm getting messages about something I'm not totally clear on.
Okay. I mean, and for what it's worth, relevant levels of, comparative levels of relevancy aside, Nick Fuentes has gotten a huge jump in exposure over this. We've got, I think, 2 more people who spoke. You can't see the buffering bar because my camera is covering it.
decision to remove American nationalists from their conference. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm moving it into something.
I don't run CPAC
I'm saying,
either.
Right, and I just said that I'm not blaming you. I've said that 3 times. So, but you do run TPUSA, and TPUSA did remove its relationship with Ashley St. Clair, who all she really did was take a picture with Nick Fuentes. She was in the same room. So my question to you, Charlie, is as someone who, purports to be pro-debate, free speech, and, the exchange of ideas, do you support blackballing people based on having controversial opinions or being even in the same room when a photograph is taken?
Yes. Actually, yeah. I'm very pro-free speech. If I was running a political organization and one of my members was taking a selfie with a neo-Nazi, where they're both like smiling and palling him around, yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's totally acceptable. I'm totally in favor of that. I mean, you wouldn't let, like, a leftist be in TPUSA, would you? Obviously, there are political prerequisites for being a member of the organization. God damn, man.
With someone who has controversial opinions. And the second part of that
you'll know, by the way, they always say controversial opinions. That's one of the big misleading bits they always do. They always say controversial opinion. They'll never say white ethno-state genocide of non-whites. They never really slide it in with that, You'll notice, by the way, when they talk about socialists, they'll never just say controversial opinions. They'll say, these socialists want to force doctors to do our healthcare. They want to force everyone to work for the same amount of money. They want to seize control of the government and establish a dictatorial state where you have no freedom of speech. They'll be very grandiose and specific. But when it comes to neo-Nazis who actually talk about Holocaust denial, just controversial opinions. This is Patrick Casey, founder of neo-Nazi group American Identity Movement. They really named their organization that? Is this Patrick Casey? White nationalist leader is plotting to take over the GOP. Oh, son of a bitch. So it is. Don't run on this page. Continue. It's this one right here. Identity Europa is pushing its members to stealthily infiltrate Republican politics to move the party towards its agenda of banning non-white immigration. Nice. There we go. See? Same, That is 100% the same Deuterino. Hondo. Look at that. He's 29? This person is 29 years old? Okay, well, whatever. White don't crack, apparently. Oh, sorry, it's Evropa. Evropa. My bad. Europa. There we go. Europa.
Question is, if the answer is no, will you debate me on immigration, identity, and demographics?
Well, so, first of all, I mean this respectfully. I have no idea who you are. The other thing, that was a private matter. Ashley's a good person. We handled it privately. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Notice how, this is what I'm going to close on, I think. We have one last person? Oh, the one last person's like a girl. She's not related to the Nazi thing, I don't think. I'm going to close on one last thing here. So this whole thing, I mean, this was a pretty big upset. Since then, if you go on Twitter, you'll find like a bunch of other people tweeting about this, Like if I go on Twitter right now, yeah. If you go on Twitter right now, you will see like a ton of people talking about what's going on and some pretty big figures coming out in support of Nick Fuentes. I mean, Paul Joseph Watson has 1 million Twitter followers, and he came out. Now, his support was tepid. Oh, free speech. Oh, shouldn't ban out a Nazi. But it's support nonetheless. And this is ultimately the sort of final stage of traditional conservatism. This is not the first time this has happened historically, It's very, very, very simple. The traditional conservatives, the NeoCons, the civic nationalists, whatever you want to call them, disseminate propaganda that is basically Nazi propaganda. You just leave out the Jews and the degeneracy point. You know? So you can be a mainstream conservative and you can talk about how Mexico is sending MS-13, blacks commit more crime, there's problems with black culture, Muslims are trying to form a caliphate to destroy the West, shithole countries as opposed to nice countries, you know, and you build a profile. All of these things are fundamentally what Nazis believe. There's not really a super substantive difference between these things, you know? The real difference ultimately is who's running the show and how do we characterize those who disagree with us. And that's pretty much the only real difference. Nazis believe that Jews are the ones responsible for bringing in all the non-white immigration to destroy the white race in response to... Some Nazis say it is revenge for the Holocaust. Some Nazis deny the Holocaust and say that it's as revenge for us being Gentiles. Some say Jews believe they're the superior, whatever. The whole 9 yards, you know? And with the Nazi morality thing, they stop pretending to give a shit about people, and they just acknowledge, like, yeah, they're degenerates and they deserve to die for failing our moral system. These people are, of course, a cancer. They are, to a person, absolute losers who have failed in their personal lives and who cling on to strong authority figures to give them meaning and purpose. There is a reason, by the way, why there are systems and organizations designed to de-radicalize Nazis, and afterwards it all comes out in the therapy sessions. Oh God, I felt miserable, I had nothing going for me, I was so angry at the other, so on and so forth. This doesn't really happen in left. There are no lefty, like, I was a socialist, oh my God, I was so filled with rage. This doesn't really happen. And that's because while both communist anarchists, me, and neo-Nazis are radicals in the sense that we deviate from traditional liberal politics, our deviation from liberal politics is, if nothing else, rooted in an actual realistic understanding of how the world functions and a desire to make it better. Nazism genuinely is the throated last gasp of angry, desperate, insecure white men. And sometimes they don't even have to be white. I mean, you see that fucking kid? That kid was pretty brown, browner than my girlfriend. And sometimes they don't have to be men, but they're typically men. Yeah, sexual repression too. And that's how it goes, for the most part. That's how the system works. They are angry and alone and miserable, and they lash out, and sometimes lashing out establishes an ethno-state. What are you gonna do? But to a man, these are genuinely unimpressive people. And their biggest advocates, people like Nick Fuentes and Stefan Molyneux, are deeply unimpressive people. Nick talks fast. He's good at running around a point, and he's pretty decent at gish galloping as well. But in terms of actually answering questions, he falters. And Stefan Molyneux, I mean, it's Stefan Molyneux. Anyone who's seen any of that man's tweets knows that he is not an intellectual powerhouse. Whatever the case may be, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. On one hand, it's nice that Nazis are revealing their power level because it makes them easier to target and destroy. And by destroy, I mean like more media exposure, more people condemn them, you know, more people get banned off social media. But on the other hand, it's also possible that this is the beginning of the beginning. That this is the beginning of the consolidation of the neo-Nazis into an open, out-and-about component of modern mainstream conservatism. And that in 10 years, boomer memes on neo-Facebook will be as likely to be about greeting cards for millennials not looking up from their phones as they will be about the inherently inferior skull shape of the negroid as opposed to the caucasoid. An individual Nazi is pathetic, but what they do have is a lot of time and emotional energy to dedicate to making the world a distinctly worse place. Yeah, I know. Which is one of the reasons why they why they seem so big online. They review bomb constantly. They throw billions of dislikes. They spam chat because this is their whole life. They don't have anything else. A Nazi is one whose enjoyment of the processes of life has been burnt out to the extent that they can enjoy nothing other than seeing other people suffer for not following in lockstep with their political aim. They don't make efforts at forming group spaces. They don't form community councils. They don't try to improve the mental health of their unwell constituency. And holy shit, are Nazis mentally ill for the most part. They don't try to make things better. They don't go to movies. They don't go enjoy television shows or enjoy a night out. They don't do any of these things. Or if they do, it's rote performance or a process, a political process for denouncing that movie, for finding more Nazis to speak to. Their enjoyment of life has been burnt out. They're empty, and they have a lot of time to dedicate to making the world a worse place. They approach it with the same fastidiousness and dedication you would expect a serial killer to pursue their shit. Don't make fun of mental illness by calling Nazis mentally ill. All right, TX Tears, you're in the wrong place if you think I'm making fun of mental illness. I am being gravely serious. Nazis are often not well. As somebody who has interacted with plenty of them, I promise you they are not well. Oh, it's a joke? Ha! I knew that. I was joking too. No, I wasn't. Whatever. We'll see how this goes, huh? We'll see how this infighting stuff goes. What I imagine is Nick Fuentes is going to be a much bigger, larger public figure following the drama surrounding all of this, and that eventually some kind of broader confrontation will be made necessary. Some broader denunciation, or maybe not. Maybe nothing will come of this. Look at Blair White's 2 most recent tweets. I don't see anything here related to what I'm talking about, and I'm considering banning you. All right, that's that. Oh, and one last thing. Groypers. Here's a cute little drawing some Nazi made. A groyper is it's a Pepe. This is the new neo-Nazi symbol. It's this one right here. This one, this fella, this one. This is what a groyper looks like, okay? This is what Nazis do. I don't know why they do this. I don't know how they choose their symbols, but this is what they've gone with, you know? This is a groyper. This is what they look like. If you see somebody with an avatar of a groyper, they're a neo-Nazi. This is not like the Pepe where it has some broader humor appeal. This is just a neo-Nazi thing. So anyway, if you see that, you're dealing with a Nazi. They also call themselves the Groyper Nation. I might talk more about the Groyper shit in the future. More dog whistles to unpack, huh? What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's funny. They rail against Marxism and postmodernism, but there's a distinctly postmodern bent to modern neo-Nazi organization.